Good day, everyone. This is teacher Jerry A. Java again for English with Jerry Java. Today we will be discussing about creative writing. What is creative writing? Some tips. What makes it different from academic writing and technical writing? When we define creative writing, we actually use like 100% of our imagination. It's making up. It's a make-believe kind of writing. It is also now known as the art of making things up. Creative writing is a vital or very important part of modern society. Traditionally referred to as literature, creative writing is an art of sorts, the art of making things up. It's writing done in a way that is not academic or technical, but still attracts an audience. Actually, audiences can really get more attracted to this type than I believe with the academic and technical, because in creative writing they are freer than in academic or technical, in which they are really required to do it. Though the definition is rather loose, creative writing can, for the many part, be considered any writing that is original and self-expressive. So as long as you are able to express your thoughts, ideas, your emotions, so that is considered creative writing. What's the purpose of creative writing? Why do we write creatively? The purpose of creative writing is to both entertain and share human experience, like love or loss, death and failure, success and failure. Writers attempt to get a truth about humanity through poetics and storytelling. If you'd like to try your hand at creative writing, just keep in mind that whether you are trying to express a feeling or form a thought, the first step is to use your imagination. You have to get out from the box. Types of creative writing include poetry, plays, movie and television scripts, fiction such as novels, novellas, and short stories, songs, speeches, memoirs, and personal essays. All those are creative writing. Like there's no strict format to follow. As you can see, some non-fiction types of writing can also be considered creative writing. Memoirs and personal essays, for example, can be written creatively to inform your readers about your life in an expressive way. Because these types are written in first person, POV1 or first person point of view, it's easy for them to be creative, because once you get to express your own personal thoughts and experiences, your own story, you'd have a lot of ideas and thoughts to be creative. Here are some techniques used in creative writing. That includes character development, plot development, vivid setting, underlying theme, point of view, dialogue, anecdotes, metaphors and similes, figures of speech, other figures of speech, imaginative language, emotional appeal, and heavy description, more adjectives and more pictures, more adverbs. Now let's get to compare technical writing versus creative writing. Technical writing is factual, whereas creative writing is fictional and imaginative. It's not factual. It need not be factual. Technical writing is informative, instructional, or persuasive, whereas creative writing is entertaining, provocative, and captivating. Technical writing is clear, precise, and straightforward, whereas creative writing is artistic, figurative, symbolic, or even vague, general. Then technical writing is objective, whereas creative writing is subjective. Objective meaning that's not personal, whereas creative writing is subjective. It's very personal. Technical writing is specialized. It uses specialized vocabulary like jargon, something. Creative writing is using generalized vocabulary, that one that the audience can really relate to. Now, here are the key differences between technical and creative writing. In creative writing, the most part is self-created. That's very personal, subjective. Although the idea might be inspired, but in technical writing, the facts are to be obliged or required, and the note is delivered from leading on what previously other grades have concluded. Most commonly, the creative writing is for general audience, for the masses, but technical writing is for specific audience. If you have a news, that's for news readers. You've got sports, those kinds. Those are technical. I like. If you have like a manual, this is manual. This manual is for this type of audience. The creative writing entertains people as it has poetry. It gets more of its purpose is for entertainment or some illustrations or another idea, whereas the technical writing causes boredom. It bores the reader, it's monotonous, as it follows a strong pattern, strict pattern based on facts, and is just to transfer the information to the audience, whether or not the audience were able to relate. So that's why some some readers are bored with technical writing. In technical writing, the specialized vocabulary, such like scientific terms, jargons, and others are used, but in creative writing, we do not use them. One can go with slang or evocative phrases or even something which cannot be fully understood by the audience. Humor, satire, jokes might be the useful essences in creative writing, but such thoughts or ideas are a no-no in technical writing. Okay, let's talk about comparison between imaginative writing and academic writing. Imaginative writing or creative writing, that is creative writing, also known as imaginative writing, versus academic writing. Creative writing is different to academic writing. Writing for websites is different to writing for newspaper columns. Journal entries are different to writing press releases on behalf of a brand. Writing purposes do vary. It's important that when undertaking any writing, you have to have a firm grasp on this concept. Okay, here are now the key differences between academic and creative writing. The principal difference, style, is the chief difference between academic and creative writing. It's the style, how you present your concept. Creative writing need not adhere to any specific style parameters. Like I said earlier, creative writing is very, very free. Academic writing is different. It is very strict with the rules or patterns or formats. Academic writing needs to be structured and executed adhering to a series of guidelines or mechanics. Indeed, so stringent are these guidelines that academic institutions include these guidelines as part of their curriculum. But for creative writing, we do away with guidelines and formats and structures. One kind of writing, academic writing, is rigid, procedural, purposed purely to convey knowledge, data, and information. It's just a transfer of knowledge. It's orderly, organized, and follows a formula. It is necessary, but it can be very, very dull or boring. Anyone can master it. Everyone should master it. Whereas the other kind of writing, which is creative writing or imaginative writing, is inspired, artistic, and entertains with word pictures, concepts, and deep meaning. It is enjoyable to read. It touches us while teaching us. It's an art form. It's not necessary to learn, but a joy to those who do. Academic writing will earn you A's, whereas creative writing may get you published. Academic writing must be taught, but rarely is. Creative writing is optional, but is almost always the focus of writing curricula. Overall, creative writing allows for more personal expression, whereas academic scholarly writing aims to explore an idea, argument, or concept. Academic writing requires more factual evidence for support and presents challenges such as the pressure of time. They each have their own purpose. Depending on your purpose, and of course, when you set your purpose and your audience, you have to have your own style of presenting your concepts. What language do we use in creative writing? We use, of course, like I said, imagery. We have to show, don't tell. We have to let our readers explore. imagine, use their senses. Now, what is imagery? Imagery is a language used by poets, novelists, and other writers to create images in the mind of the reader. Imagery includes figurative and metaphorical language to improve the reader's experience through their senses. Once you activate their senses, that's when they can relate to your words, to your story. Why is it important to use imagery? Because we experience life through our senses. A strong composition should appeal to them through the use of imagery. Descriptive imagery launches the reader into the experience of a warm spring day, scorching hot summer, crisp fall, or harsh winter. Look at the words. Those words will really, those words have imagery. It allows readers to directly sympathize with characters, relate to the characters and narrators as they imagine having the same sense experiences. So that with using imagery or senses, they get to relate to the character or to the narrators. Imagery commonly helps build compelling poetry, convincing narratives, vivid plays, well-designed film sets, and descriptive songs. Now let's have this sensory imagery. It involves the use of descriptive language to create mental images to serve as background so that it will serve as a picture. It works by engaging a reader's five senses. The five senses, of course, you have the five senses, the gustatory, the olfactory, the vision, the odal, tactile. Okay, here are now the five sensory images. We have the visual, gustatory, auditory, olfactory, and tactile. Visual for the sight, gustatory for the taste, auditory for the ears, olfactory for the nose, smelling, and tactile for the touch, sense of touch. Now let's start with visual imagery. It engages the sense of sight. Physical attributes including color, size, shape, lightness and darkness, shadows and shade may be described in this type of sensory image. Examples: the full moon rose slowly over the trees, blanketing the farm with its pale glow. So you have there that you can imagine because of these visual imagery words. An old hound dog kept watch from the safety of the rickety porch, the sparkle of the wet grass reflected in his eyes. Let's have auditory imagery for the ears. It engages the sense of hearing. Literary devices such as onomatopoeia. What is onomatopoeia? That's when we make words out of sounds. And alliteration, the consonant, can help create sounds in writing. Examples: the clank of heavy plates drifted from the kitchen and fought with the steady hum of couples in conversation. You have the clank, that's onomatopoeia. Hum, that's onomatopoeia. The splatters of rain on the ground was like the sound of bacon being pan-fried. Splatters, yan. Gustatory for the taste. It engages the sense of taste. This can include the five basic tastes like sweet, salty, bitter, sour, and umami. Umami, that's a taste of when something tastes really good, really well, as well as the textures and sensations tied to the act of eating. Examples: the sweet butter, cream, icing melted on my tongue. I closed my eyes to savor the richness of the warm spice cake and knew I would have a second piece before the end of the night. Olfactory for the nose. It engages the sense of smell. Scent is one of the most direct triggers of memory and emotion, but can be difficult to write about. That stinks like rotten meat, said Seth, clamping his hand over his nose. He took in a deep breath and smelled the damp earth, the kind worms loved, and rotted trees from the nearby woods. Lastly, tactile imagery, touch. It engages the sense of touch. This is what you can feel and includes texture and the many sensations a human being experiences when touching something. Differences in temperature is also part of tactile imagery. Examples: the sudden plunge into the cool water took his breath away and raised goosebumps on his arms. Her marriage felt like the beach after a storm, messy, tangled, and trashy. So a marriage is being compared to the beach after a storm. So we have here, in summary, visual is to sight, gustatory is to taste, auditory is to hearing, olfactory is to smell, as tactile is to touch. Now let's talk about diction, or the choice of words. It is a careful selection or choice of words to communicate a message or establish a particular voice or writing style. Diction is very important. What is the purpose of diction in writing? It creates a certain tone, mood, feeling that supports our purpose. It supports the setting. It establishes a narrative voice and tone. It brings characters to life. Now, here are the 5 types of diction. You have formal, informal, you can also be colloquial or slang or poetic. Let's talk first about formal diction. It is the use of sophisticated language. It sticks to grammatical rules, very strict, and uses complicated syntax, the structure of sentence like the Old English, like the British English. This elevated type of language is often found in professional texts, business documents, and legal papers. Very formal. Informal diction is more conversational and often used in narrative literature. This casual vernacular is representative of how people communicate in real life, so it's person to person. Colloquial words or expressions are informal in nature and generally represent a certain region or time. Ain't and y'all are examples of colloquial expressions born in rural areas of the United States. They usually use this in the USA, ain't and y'all. You have their playing, the taken away or taking out of the G and then replacing it with the apostrophe. Wanna instead of saying want to. Let me instead of saying let me. Give me instead of saying give me. Gonna instead of saying going to, and gotta instead of saying got to. So you see, these colloquial words or expressions are kind of informal because we do not actually use this in campus journalism, in academic writing, or in technical writing. Slang. These are words that originated within a specific culture or subgroup but gained traction. Slang can be a new word, a shortened or modified word, or words that take on a new meaning. Examples in the Philippines, Filipino express like we use charot, werpa instead of power, pet malul, malupit, and lodi or idol. Then we have also have the word kilig. There are many words that only Filipinos know. These are slang. Even the word, I guess the word sang used in the present tense. Sang is a past tense, but in English, like in American English, they use it in the present tense to mean that somebody is really a good singer. She really sings, or he really sings really, really, really well. Like they took us to church. Poetic, you can also have a poetic diction. It is driven by lyrical words that relate to a specific theme reflected in a poem and create a euphonious, meaning good, or harmonious sound. Poetic diction usually involves the use of descriptive language, sometimes set to a beat or rhyme, like writing poem. Now here are some tips in writing a fictional story in creative writing. Tip number 1, start writing with what you know, with what you are very familiar of. So that's why most first person point of view are really effective, because it's what you know from yourself, from your own experiences. Tip number 2, choose what design or style you need to compose your fiction in. Choose your style. Have some concepts. Then tip number 3, this is what I said earlier, you have to show, don't tell. You have to really describe, you have to really create a picture. Use the senses, use imagery. Tip number 4, build up the stakes early. So have early on in your, right after the introduction, in the rising action, have there some build up or some conflicts, introduce some conflicts. Tip number 5, create three-dimensional characters, 3D characters, not just a flat or static characters. Use dynamic characters. Tip number 6, figure out the basic setting and plot. Of course, you should have a setting. And of course, you should have your plot. Tip number 7, choose a point of view. Your point of view or perspective, it can be first person, second person, or third person. Third person, you can also choose whether you have third person limited or third person omniscient. Third person limited, there's a limit or boundary as to how much or how far the narrator can access, not a full access of the thoughts and ideas and plans of every character. Whereas the third person omniscient, it's from the word omniscient, all knowing. It's like God knowing everything. Tip number 8, this says that you don't be too predictable. Of course, just like any writing, you should have a plot twist which are not predictable. Have some thrill, suspense. Okay, this is what sells today in Netflix, in movies, in novels. Do not be very predictable. Explore, explore, explore. Tip number 9, give your characters motivations. Inspire your characters. What does this character want? So that, remember that your character, especially your protagonist or your main character, represents the readers. Tip number 10, no tears for the writer, no tears for the reader. So if you as a writer, you have to have your purpose and you set your purpose according to your audience. Okay? You have to bear your, you have to see your, you have to really check on your readers or on your audience. So if you as a writer, you were not able to feel, you were not able to cry with your output, with your creative writing article or your story, so that means also that maybe your audience won't be able to cry. When you can't laugh at your own story, maybe your audience might not be able to laugh also. Tip number 11, revise, revise, revise. Like in any kinds or piece of writing, it takes a lot of revision. Tip number 12, trust yourself. You have to gain confidence that if you are a good writer, who else will read your story if you yourself is not satisfied, is not glad of your output. 12 tips in writing a story. Of course, set your design, show, don't tell, build up the stakes early. This is now a review. Recap, create three-dimensional characters, figure out the setting and plot, choose a point of view, don't be predictable, give your characters motivation, start writing what you know, no tears for the writer, no tears for the reader, revise, 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 and of course, trust yourself, of course, there. So that ends about creative writing. Good luck in your novels and your stories. Be free to explore, be free to write. Bye, bye, bye.